what I think is really been blowing my mind is everyone who's talking about the Taylor Swift travel aspect of her getting to the
Oh
Super
yeah,
Bowl.
the
It
logistics of
sounds
it all. Yeah.
it sounds like one of those like SAT math questions that you're like, Greg has 38 watermelons. Greg then goes to the market with 38 watermelons and leaves the market with 17 watermelons. He sold each watermelon for $5. Like it's because when you do the math, and everyone's like tweeting this out, and you got TikTokers going crazy about it. It is one of those mind F's where if she leaves Tokyo, where her show is on Saturday, February 10th, the flight from Tokyo to Vegas is 12 hours. So she's living 12 hours in an airplane
Yep.
to get from Tokyo to Vegas.
But they're 13 hours ahead.
Yeah,
in
so
Tokyo.
she would leave if she left at noon on Super Bowl Sunday from Tokyo. At noon on Super Bowl Sunday, she'd arrive in Vegas at 8 a.m. on Super Bowl Sunday. So it's like, she'd go back in time. Like it is literal time travel. But a lot of people are saying she might just leave after the concert.
Right. Yeah.
And
If she gets a plane at midnight, she'll be there the day before. She'll get there.
Yeah. She'll get there Saturday night. And then you can really kind of more acclimate to the time travel. When you're that rich and famous,
you're taking a private jet, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, I still feel like you would. I mean, it would still, I guess, to me, as the average human, days matter more. Like, what day of the week matters more, right? Like, to Taylor Swift, it's not like, oh, well, this is really going to F up my Monday waking up early for work. Like there's no there's no
consideration.
The jet
like
lag,
that.
the jet lag is different, right? It's not like as long as she gets rest and she wakes up at like I'm up at like now 9 a.m. Like, it doesn't matter that it was Saturday. Now it's Saturday again. Like, for her, days don't matter, right?
No, yeah. It's it's definitely a little bit different. And not to mention, she's probably got a much better shot at getting rest on the plane than the average Joe sitting
on a commercial flight
economy with trying to spread out and not having any room to do so. Yeah. So I think she'll be all right. I think she'll be able to manage this one. But all that to be said, that's got to be exhausting, like just touring in general, thinking about the prospects of having to tour 250 days out of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know how bands like the Rolling Stones did it for 4 or 5 decades.
Yeah.
Constantly with each other, touring, doing a show every day. It sounds exhausting. So
the real question will be her next concert after the Super Bowl is February 16th in Australia. So the question then
she's got 5 days to get to Australia, and
will Travis be there? Like, that's, to me, the bigger question. Will Travis then be in Australia?
Well, when's the parade gonna be? Too,
well, and that's just usually it. Are you revealing your pick?
But
are you revealing your pick early? I already tweeted it out. I bet Chiefs money line. I don't know if I'm going to actually pick them to win the game as we get closer in a week and a half to analyze it. But the fact that I got Patrick Mahomes plus money last night, I could not bet it.
Well, I think we all know that, the deciding factor on who wins is going to be Kadarius Toney. So we'll just have to see.
How live will he go on Instagram? Yeah.
But yeah, we've got the two. It is Brock Purdy. It is Patrick Mahomes, a showdown for the ages and a repeat of Super Bowl 55 is what it was. So yeah, 54? Was it 54?
This is 58.
The 2019 season.
This is 58. So that had to have been 53.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Because 57 was the Eagles. 56 was the Bengals. 55 was the Bucks beating the.
Yeah, and then they were the year before that, right?
So 54.
So it's 54. So it's 54. There we go. We've got it decided. The Super Bowl 54 rematch on the horizon, but it is not Jimmy Garoppolo facing off and dueling with Patrick Mahomes. It is, in fact, Mr. Irrelevant himself, Brock Purdy. those watching the YouTube stream or on your video podcast on Spotify, that was a reference to Mortal Kombat for those youngins that didn't grow up with the Sega
I
Genesis.
got it.
Even though I know that they are still making
Yeah.
movies and video games on that. But yeah,
Finish him.
a little fun. Finish it. So interesting setup we have here, and we've got the storylines that maybe a lot of fans didn't want to see going into Super Bowl 58, but it is what it is. We have Chiefs 49ers as Kansas City takes care of business against Baltimore 17-10, and the San Francisco 49ers thwart your Detroit Lions 34-31. So yeah, an interesting display between the dichotomy of these two games, kind of how they went. They were both ended up being 7 points or less, but they couldn't have been any different in terms of how these games unfolded. So very interested to hear your thoughts on how these broke down and kind of how they developed over the course of time. That, what was it? I don't know, 9-hour window that we had on Sunday for the last time as well, because now we are going to get treated to just one more NFL game before we have to wait 8+ months for more NFL action. So let's soak it up while we can, and have our final overall weekend preview, because our recap, I should say, because our next recap is going to be of just one game, the Super Bowl 58 itself. So first off, Mark, Chiefs beat the Ravens in Baltimore. We were talking about how Lamar, had to kind of set the narrative straight on his playoff record coming into this one, 1-5, I believe, going into this game, and obviously having the most successful overall season that he's had in a Ravens uniform, probably the de facto MVP. But of course, Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs, stumbling mid-season, but finding their form at the right time, and once again took care of business. It wasn't pretty, but I don't know about you. It certainly felt like Kansas City dominated this entire game, despite it really only being a 7-point differential at the end.
Well, and that's because they dominated. It felt like they dominated the game. I think the way to answer that is because of the way in which Baltimore decided to play this game. And I think that's what was so frustrating. Yeah. I would imagine to Baltimore Ravens bettors, Baltimore Ravens fans, is that the team that led the league in rushing this year just was non-existent in trying to develop their run game.
Yeah.
And even at times, it felt like Lamar was hesitant to run. I just kept waiting for him to be like, boom, okay, if you're just going to keep calling pass plays, I'm going to say screw it, and I'm going to just take off and run and take some of these open lanes. Brock Purdy did what we expected Lamar Jackson to do in really just taking what the defense gave you. I will say, to me, in the macro, the big view of this game, is before we start diving into more specifics, I really was just disappointed. I overall was just bummed with how this game went, because you had the 7-7 quick back and forth, boom, boom. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, after that, I felt like are we due for like a 40-35 game?
Get your popcorn ready, and here we go. Let's light it up. And really what ended up happening was the Ravens defense settled in, and the Chiefs just kept taking what the Ravens gave them, which didn't allow for them to score many points. I mean, the Chiefs didn't score in the second half, but the Chiefs defense, they played great, and the Ravens just played into the Chiefs' hands. And Lamar Jackson, I just kept waiting for Tom Monken and the offense to just say, what are we doing here? Let's get back to what we do. And if we're going to go down, let's go down swinging with what we do. We'll talk about that with the Lions coming on up. At least they went swinging with what they do, what their identity was. And that is not what the Ravens did at all. It felt like the Buffalo Bills. They just turned it over to Lamar and said, save us, go win us the game, MVP. And it just was a really disappointing effort and game plan and execution from a team that was deserving to be the number one overall seed, an athlete who deserves and will win the MVP. It just was a really disappointing, flat effort. And I said going into the game last week, hey, You lose to Mahomes in an AFC Championship game. Like, I'm not going to hold it against you. I still feel that way. Like, I don't hold it against Lamar. I feel like he was let down with the game plan. I feel like he was let down from a coaching standpoint. Overall, the defense did their job. They held the Chiefs to 17 points at home. If you would have told me on Friday, hey, here's a time traveler came back in time and said the Ravens hold the Chiefs to 17 points at home, I'd have been like, it's a Baltimore blowout, 34-17. You know what I mean? Something along those lines. So Lamar did not play well. He had a lot of balls batted, bad interception. That interception likely was one of the worst interceptions in a red zone of a championship game, probably in NFL history.
Triple coverage.
So ugly. But in the end, I also can say to myself, man, I feel like they just did not game plan for Lamar well. And at times, though, I'd also say, hey, this is a 2-time MVP, year 6 in the league for him. He has got to be more advanced enough to say, I'm going to audible, I'm going to do things taken in my own hands. Because at least Josh Allen, when he goes Superman going down swinging like a man on too many drugs. He taking, smashing all the buttons on the controller. Lamar didn't do that. It just seemed like the ball got deflated and they were like, and it just fell apart. I tweeted after the game, like, I was so ready for this to be an all-timer. We talked about it. This is going to be the game that they talk about in Canton. And in the end, it just was anything but that. And before I turn over to you, I will just say, as I turn towards the Chiefs, it also was just kind of ho-hum. Patrick Mahomes, 11 straight completions, taking what the defense gives us. Patrick Mahomes, multiple third down conversions on some big drives. We're just taking what they give us, keeping control, keeping the time of possession, keeping the ball, keeping Lamar on the sideline. And that was the best defense for them, was their offense just methodically motoring down the field over and over again, feeding it to Kelsey. Mahomes was terrific, and he carried his end of the bargain. And I feel like if it would have gotten to a shootout, the Chiefs probably would have ended up scoring more as well. It felt like also the Chiefs were just playing a little bit like, all right, we're just going to manage this because the Ravens are not doing anything. So why expose ourselves to mistakes in and of itself?
Yeah, I would say with the Ravens game plan, I would agree that it was, I mean, everyone's obviously dumping on the overall game plan. I think the worst part of it is the fact that once the game plan, wasn't working, I think what Todd Monken and John Harbaugh expected was that Kansas City was going to force them to pass it a lot. And so their thought was, well, they're probably going to stack the box and they're going to slow down our run game. And so we'll come out, we'll run it a few times, but really what we're going to do is just kind of like pepper them through the air. But when that wasn't working and when their run game actually was, they failed to make the switch to just start leaning into the run game a little bit more and making it more balanced. And it was a bizarre shift with the team. I felt that the approach from like a on paper perspective seemed very antsy in terms of like what they're how they were very anxious and not really confident, if that makes sense. And yet the demeanor, it felt lethargic from Baltimore. It never felt like, whoa, this is the AFC Championship. I don't know. It just seemed like they were
It's a great point.
Not sure what they were doing. It just seemed like, not that they didn't want to be there. Of course that they wanted to be there, but it did feel like they just weren't like rising to the moment. Whereas on the opposite side, it felt very relaxed. I felt like the whole time Kansas City, and part of that is the experience of being there 6 straight years. You kind of get familiar with the landscape of what this game is and how these games tend to go. And there's so much turnover, or with consistency, I should say, with, Chris Jones, with that linebacker corn, Bolton and Gay, and, Patrick, Travis, Andy Reid, they've all been there together. So there's part of that. But yeah, I mean, just from watching the rhythm of everything, one side seemed relaxed, the other seemed too lethargic. and antsy at times as well.
It's a
So
it's a
yeah,
great
it was
point
bizarre.
that you're saying there, the lethargic, because when you said it, it really like kind of popped in my head, this thought I had while watching the game. It looked like the Baltimore Ravens had just taken 3 weeks off. Where
Yeah,
it
yeah.
almost like, because that's what we were concerned about when the Ravens played the Texans, right? Like, oh man, they're going to come out and it's the rest versus rust. And it's like it showed up a week later. It's almost like the game should have been flip-flopped around, where they came out for the Texans firing on all cylinders, and then they came out with against the Chiefs looking like they had just taken 3 weeks off because they had earned the 1 seed. It was very,
Yeah, it
very
wasn't
weird.
attack mode. It was
Yeah.
very much like, how do we maneuver the game? But
Yeah.
they weren't maneuvering like that. Kyle Shanahan plays that
Yeah.
way, but he pivots and he's, obviously like an offensive genius. They just didn't have the capability at the end of the day, I think, to properly maneuver the greatest quarterback that we've ever seen and one of the greatest offensive minds that we've ever seen. So they kind of got away from their identity and who we thought they would be,
Totally.
which is,
I mean,
use
6 carries
Lamar
was your
and
running backs. That's getting away from your identity. And I know
the
the
whole
running
game.
backs are,
Yeah.
the running backs are beat up. I get it. But like, that's also part of what Baltimore is. For 4 straight years, the running backs have been beat up. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they still
And they
have
were
led.
beat up from the start of the year, and
Yeah.
they
And
still were the top, rushing team. So
they were
that's
the number 1 rushing team
that
in the
excuse
NFL,
goes
and they
out
had
the
6
way.
carries with their running backs. What was the point of signing Dalvin Cook? I mean, and the game was never way out of hand. Like it never
I know.
even got like the 17-point game with Detroit and San Francisco. So it was just very confusing. Now, I will say, Kansas City also, I mean, caught some breaks. I hate the taunting call, but again, it was
It's terrible.
it was a textbook taunting call. Like you
Yeah.
stand over a
It's
guy.
terrible that it's taunting, but it was 100% the right call given the
If
rule,
given
right?
the rule, and it's
Yeah.
again, we can disagree. I think we all agree in professional sports, we don't want guys fighting and throwing punches. But these are pro athletes getting paid millions of dollars. I'm cool with them taunting. Like it's not a big deal. I can
Yeah.
separate it, right?
I'm cool with horns down as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
is a diehard Longhorns fan. I hate it, but you got to respect the people put the horns down on you. So I will say, like, there was breaks that went Kansas City's way, and then you obviously the fumble from Zay Flowers. I also thought they forced it to Zay Flowers a lot, and they just didn't. Mark Andrews didn't show up till I think he didn't get his first catch till the second half. Like it just was
Likely in this game.
and then they
Bateman
tried to
Odell
force it
were
to
largely.
Likely. Yeah, I mean, it was ugly, and it was just not a well played game. And I will say, on the other side, we'll start talking about Kansas City here a little bit. I mean, Mahomes starting 11 for 11. The dude gets better in these big situations.
He does.
It
He's
is
hyper
wild to
efficient.
see. They are really turning into. I don't even say they're turning into like the Patriots. They're really turning into like the Golden State Warriors dynasty and like the Spurs dynasty, where it's like they look at the regular season now truly as like they're like a LeBron James team. We're just like, okay, cool, whatever. Just let me
doesn't matter.
call me when the playoffs start. And now that they're winning on the road in the playoffs, they're really like a LeBron James prime too. Like, all right, just okay. Call me when the playoffs start, and then we'll play. We'll go play. I mean, and when you watch what the Chiefs have also had this kind of like self-discovery moment with benching Tony, and it was so stupid of Tony to go and to do the Instagram live thing, because it's like, dude, they're trying to do you a favor by just saying, listen, it's an illness, injury, a family thing. They're trying to do you a favor. Like your career's done with them. So they're trying to do you a solid. And so for you to go on and be like, no, man, I'm actually 100% healthy. They're like trying to think like that's going to like cause like, no, dude, we get it. Like you're like,
He's trying to save face,
out.
but there's nothing to save at this point.
You're missing out on. You should go on the live and be like, yeah, I am injured. Can't wait to try to be back with my team. Or you know what I mean? I'll be healthy when I'm out there. Like, because you're done with Kansas City. Like your career is over in Kansas City. So the Chiefs are somehow able to block out noise, handle distractions, and then Mahomes in these giant moments just plays incredible football. And the fact that Travis Kelce, a tight end, has the most catches in postseason history is, again, an insane stat.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
And it just goes to show what Mahomes and Kelsey and Reed have done in this generation of Chiefs football. I don't know what the next iteration of Chiefs football looks like. I know that if they try to last 20 years like Tom and Belichick did, they're going to have to go through some highs and lows. I do know now, I can confidently say, in this run of 6 years as a starter, nothing's come. They've won Super Bowls going through a really great Niners defense, a loaded Philly team that was as hot as could be. They lost a Super Bowl on the road, the first ever home game for a Super Bowl team during COVID.
He's beat Andrew Luck.
And missing out on your two starting tackles. That was their loss against the greatest quarterback of all time. That's what it took to lose a Super Bowl. And you now did it with you add to that. Oh, and they got to Super Bowls on the road going through Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, the MVP. There's no way you can say, oh, they're just like, this is Cupcake City. They're earning. Right. They're earning these Super Bowl appearances, and now, granted, they haven't won this one, and we don't know what'll happen yet. Win or lose, again, they've earning the right to be here, and not just another cakewalk for them. None of it has been a cakewalk, even though this is the first time they're having to do it on the road. Even when they were at home,
sure.
They had to go through a Josh Allen led team, and then they had to go through an all-time great Niners defense. They had to go through a loaded Philly team. And so it is really turning into a special run. The stats on Mahomes are insane. I want to read a couple of them off here. He's now 10-1-1 against the spread. He's also 9-3 straight up as an underdog. It's like he's 14-3 overall in the playoffs. He's 13-1 in regulation in the playoffs. 2-0 on the road, 3-0 as an underdog in the playoffs. He's also the playoffs all-time yards per game leader, passer rating leader, completion percenter rating leader, and TD to INT. He doesn't turn over the ball in the playoffs. It's insane. In the first 6 years of starting, overall record in the regular season, he's 72-22. Tom was 70-24. His playoff record overall in the 6 years of starting versus Brady's 6 years of starting, 14-3 versus 12-2. AFC titles 4-3, Mahomes over Brady. Super Bowl rings, he has a chance to tie Tom. He's down 2-3 right now. The touchdown and QB rating stuff, it's way off the charts. Mahomes over Brady, but it's a different NFL, and Brady was a different quarterback at that time. It is.
He has more playoff wins than Peyton Manning and John Elway. And he's only, I think, 2 away from Joe Montana.
What I will say, Dan,
remarkable.
And this is, we can kind of maybe start to wrap it up with this. I would ask you, I'm trying to get my head around this thought and what you can no longer say it's early in his career. I mean, he's 7 years as a starter. This is his 7 years as a pro, 6 years as a starter. So he's now in. If he plays even, let's say he goes to 16, 17 years, right? Like that's a long career. He's now entered this season, what I would say is the start of the middle of his career, right? The next 5 years,
probably the prime. I mean,
well, he's definitely in his prime, but like this is, this is years 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 would be like the middle of his career. Then years like 12 through 15 or 12 to 16 is like the later part, right? If we're doing that many years. So you can't say, oh, it's so early in his career anymore. He's now in the meat of his career. Tom lost Super Bowls in the meat of his career, right?
Yeah.
That's where now, again, Tom's career we now know is a longer career. It's 21, 22 seasons. Like it's an insane. So the early part of Tom's career was really like 8, 9 years. And then 8, 9 years middle part, and then 8, 9 years end part, if you're doing it into 3, breaking it up. But remember, it was the middle part of his career when he didn't win Super Bowls. That's when he lost the 2 to the Giants. That is when he couldn't make it through Peyton Manning and those Broncos teams to make it to a couple Super Bowls. Big Ben got to one there. The Ravens got to one and won one in the middle part of Tom's career. And then it was the last 6 years of Tom's career. He added 4 more rings, 3 with the Patriots, and he really cemented himself as the all-time greatest there is. So I ask you, is this going to be a Super Bowl win and a closing chapter to the beginning part? Or do you see this as the beginning of the middle, where this is now maybe where Mahomes, he might lose a couple Super Bowls, but still put up insane stats and build that resume, chase Tom's numbers? It's just a weird thing to start thinking about when you're trying to put into context of Patrick Mahomes, this part of his career. In a vacuum, he's got a chance, just looking at this as 1 year, obviously he's in the Super Bowl, he's got a chance to win it. But in the larger level, if you start to try to play out his career, this is that time in Tom's career where you start to say, man, he ran into some really tough teams that were playing really great football. And, it's no shame on him to lose the Super Bowl, because it feels like if Mahomes loses one, people will be like, oh, well, now he's lost 2, won 2. Is he that good? Is he that great? Like, we're going to overanalyze that to death. To me, losing a Super Bowl is not the end of the world for Patrick Mahomes here at all.
Well, certainly, yeah. I mean, when you've already got 3 in the bank, potentially, of course, then it's, it's a drop in the bucket in the scheme of things. I don't know the full answer to the question there, because, certainly he could lose Super Bowls. I mean, he could lose this one coming up, and then you're talking about, when's he gonna start to stack those rings again? But I will say, Tom won 3, his first 3 years in
6 seasons,
or 6 seasons, 3 in his first 6 seasons, in his career, whereas, this would be a little bit longer. This would be 7 seasons as a starter, but 8 seasons in his career.
No, 6 seasons as a starter,
or 6 seasons.
7 seasons.
Okay. That's right. Because he's made 6 straight.
Because technically, Tom
AFC
won 3 rings in his first 4 years as a starter. Remember, they won, then they lost, and then they won back-to-back. So Mahomes as a starter, it was Super Bowl, lost in an AFC Championship game, lost in it would have been.
No, then he won the Super Bowl. Then he lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah, his first year as a starter, he didn't win the Super Bowl, right? It was they lost to the Patriots. So it was lost in an AFC Championship game, won a Super Bowl, lost in a Super Bowl to the Bucs, lost to the Bengals, won a Super Bowl. 6 as a starter, so has a chance to win a Super Bowl. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's what I'm saying. You're trying to compare. It's just a weird. It's a wild thing, and I think that's why. I think the gist of my question is, it's important for us to make sure we're framing this in the vacuum. That is, let's focus on this season and not try to write Patrick Mahomes' story yet, because it's right. I mean, Brady played for 22 years.
I just don't think Patrick is going to go 10 years without a Super Bowl ring after this year, regardless of what happened. And that's what happened to Tom. That's what happened to, I mean, some people forget that's how long his career was, 23 seasons to be exact. He went 10 straight years without winning a Super Bowl. Like, that's a full career for most players in the NFL. And so, Tom's teams, they peaked early and then petered out for a little bit. And I say that when they were still going to the big game, they just and then he comes back and goes on a couple more runs in the 2010s and so on and so forth. But yeah, I don't see that for Mahomes. I mean, this guy is so different, and if Reed stays with him for a certain amount of time, I just don't see him going a decade straight without winning a Super Bowl. So he might win. He'll probably lose a Super Bowl or 2 in there, because I see him getting there multiple times after this year. But he's going to win one.
Yeah.
Even if he wins one this year, he's going to win another one, I would say confidently, in the next 7 years as well. So
it's a great point you make about the 10-year gap, because remember, after Peyton won his second with Denver, it was 3-2, Tom to Peyton.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the scoreboard. It was 3-2. And I remember I have like the Facebook memory of it. I just like popped up of like, if Peyton gets his second, he will be my GOAT. Like, because I always was a Peyton over Tom guy, because to me it was about he was more talented at playing the position. And then Tom won 4 in his last, 8 seasons. And you're like, well, what am I supposed to do now? Like, it was an avalanche. So you're right. It's what Mahomes has a chance to do, I guess, in the larger picture is if he does get 3 this early and is on pace with Tom, if he doesn't have the 10-year drought, he could maybe retire earlier,
Right. Yeah. No,
and still,
he doesn't even
have
need
to play
7.
the 23 seasons to get maybe to be more in the, listen, Bill Russell has more rings than Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan, we say, was the better player. And we might start to look at the Mahomes Brady thing like that. Mahomes may end his career with 4 or 5, but we may still say, like,
yeah, no, he was better. Exactly.
He was better.
That's why I don't think he needs 7. I think if he gets 5, that'll be pretty much a surefire. Okay, he's not. I would say it's unquestionable at 5. At 4, the debate might still be there. I would probably still say. I mean, I already feel that way right now, like that he's the best that we've ever seen. But you got to start. You got to get some more accolades to get close to 7. 4 is in rare company. We're talking Montana. We're talking
the Brady people will always have a tough argument too, because he did beat Patrick in a Super Bowl and was 2-0 in the playoffs against Patrick. So like, it'll be a fun argument eventually. I know it was a long kind of diatribe, but that's just, again, we talked about on Friday's show. That's what that game meant. Like now we would have had this long diatribe on Lamar now with the opportunity for his first, if he would have played well and won that game. You have this kind of, it's when you start collecting hardware and you add rings into the occasion, it is a really fascinating thing to look at is football lovers and the history as a whole.
Absolutely. No, I think this whole narrative and storyline is going to be fascinating. And, that's why with this matchup coming up, and we'll talk more about this next week, so I'm not going to go all into it. But, I was in like a group chat with some friends, and one of our friends is like really not excited about the Super Bowl at all. He's like, this is the worst possible matchup. Like, I could care less. And I feel differently, to be honest. Yes, I would have been really excited to see the Lions in there. But, as we transition here to the 49ers, I think there's one side of this Super Bowl where you're like, okay, we can watch Patrick Mahomes get his 3rd ring, make this dynasty even more solidified. Yeah. And that's cool and exciting in and of itself and good for the league. On the flip side, I know people think the 49ers are this like, oh, here we go again, the 49ers in the Super Bowl. This is a team that hasn't won a Super Bowl since 1994, people.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, we're talking about a franchise. There's a good chunk of people who are in their late 20s.
30 years coming up.
Diehard fans, and they've never seen their team win a Super Bowl. In fact, they've seen their team have devastating losses in the NFC Championship to, Green Bay, a devastating loss to the Chiefs, and just not being able to get over that hump, a devastating loss
to the Rams
and
the Eagles the last in 2 years.
And so people were talking about how they wanted to see the Ravens in here and how that would have been a better narrative and storyline. The Ravens won in 2012. The 49ers have not won in much longer than that, and they've been there way more consistently in terms of getting there. So I think there's plenty of excitement surrounding this matchup, and I think there's plenty to play for when it comes to not just, the same old story. I think the 49ers have a chance to get, like harkening back to the Steve Young days of getting the monkey off the back, right? That famous quote on the sidelines where he finally won the Super Bowl.
I think
they have a chance to do the same thing. And it's for Kyle Shanahan as much as it is for anyone else at the 49ers, right?
Yeah. And I think you made a great point. And I think to me, what drives it home is the Niners were in a lose-lose in the sense that the Lions have become America's kind of sweetheart team, the darling team. And I also think we don't want to have to deal with the Brock Purdy conversation, because if Brock Purdy wins the Super Bowl, in 2 weeks from now, we'll be recording the show post-Super Bowl. And if it's because Brock Purdy, went threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, was the Super Bowl MVP. It's a really weird conversation we have to start having in that realm too. And the conversation is, you should never overpay guys who are like elite system game executives, right? And you also have to say that he now legitimately 2 years in, an NFC Championship game and then a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl victory, is very much on the Tom Brady trajectory. Like, right? You know what I mean? Like, he then is the Tom Brady trajectory guy because 2
Late
years
round.
in, you know, same exact kind of storyline. And so I think we just we didn't want to have to like necessarily deal with that. Also, I think there's something slightly unlikable about the Niners in just the Shanahan weird kind of arrogance of like, of just,
it's a West Coast gravitas.
It is. It is. And I think overall they've been a historically winning franchise too. So they were in a lose-lose. They're the right team to be in here. Again, if we would have said at the beginning of the season, Chiefs, Niners, Super Bowl.
Yeah, it would make perfect sense.
Sign me up. Let's go. But I think when you look at it as a whole, the Chiefs had such a weird season. They weren't the real Chiefs, right? So we were kind of doubting them. And then the Niners were so exposed when Debo and Trent were out, Trent Williams, that Purdy was bad and they lost 3 straight games. And then they got so shellacked by the Ravens that we started to feel like, you know, the Niners aren't who we thought the Niners were. They were last year, in the year they made the Super Bowl as kind of this bully, right? But the Niners are the best team in the NFC. They have been for the past 3 years. They didn't make it to a Super Bowl when they lost to the Rams because they got outplayed by a better quarterback. They didn't make it to the Super Bowl last year because their quarterback got injured early in the game. And then this year they make it to the Super Bowl because everything broke right for them. They were healthy and they were the better team for 48 minutes. For 60 minutes, right? Whatever, not 48 minutes basketball, but for 60 minutes in the NFC Championship game yesterday. So, if we dive into this game, I will say this. Overall, the larger thought, just take away from the game, was the Niners were the better team. The Niners have all the dudes. The Niners dudes, and they made the adjustments and showed up in the second half. The Niners were the given an inch on that 4th down early in the third quarter, and they took a mile and a half. You know what I mean? They ran with it. I will also say this was the perfect game for numbers versus watching a game versus what the analytics say. Because the analytics do back up Dan Campbell. And they do back up Dan Campbell's coaching style, being aggressive on 4th down. But the momentum of the game and watching the game would tell you that points do matter and your team needs a heartbeat sometimes.
Yeah.
I will say I agreed with kicking the field goal at the end of the first half. I agreed with going for it on 4th down early in the third. And I disagreed with not kicking the field goal to tie the game in the fourth quarter. Because, and I can explain each one. Getting the field goal at the end of the half, not getting points there would have given them the momentum, right? And taking those points as free points there at the end of the half, it solidifies we kicked your ass for the first half of football, and we're in a really great spot. So I like that move. Going forward in the third quarter, I like because that's true to who you are. And it was the right play call. You had your guy open. He dropped it. And it's true to who you are. And the game, you still have so much time left. Even though the Niners came out and got a field goal, got a little momentum, you had so much time left in that game. You were still in control of that game. So stay true to your identity. So I am okay with that. I'm not okay with not taking the points when you're now down by 3.
To tie the game, yeah.
To tie the game, because then even if they score, which the Niners had, they still had all the momentum, blah, blah, blah. Even if they score, you go down, you score a touchdown. Your offense was moving the ball. You had a key drop. You had a really nasty fumble from your star rookie. and then you had another key mistake drop, in that second half. So it's not like you weren't moving the ball. So take the points there in that moment. But in the end, I'm not going to crucify Dan Campbell. I'm not going to crucify the Lions. Part of these games is being in these big moments and knowing how to win in these games. I do think the Ravens next year are going to be more ready for if they're in the AFC Championship game, no matter where that's at, to be more prepared for how do we handle this as an organization. I do think the Niners and the Chiefs have been very prepared in these moments to be ready, to be calm, to be steady, and to be ready for whatever the game throws at them, even if it's a big deficit or even if it's somehow a weird low-scoring game where your opponent's not doing what they thought they were doing and you manage the game and handle it. The Lions, they stuck to their identity, but in the end, their identity and not being able to just be malleable to what the game needed them to be in that moment cost them big. And they were a young team that made a bunch of mistakes. That fumble was just as devastating as the not kicking the field goal. The fumble was killer. And they did what they were supposed to do, run the ball, get back to who we were. And your star rookie, had a really bad moment against a really great defense. So I'm not going to kill the Lions today. They were the better team for a half. They weren't the better team for 4 quarters. They were the better coach team for a half. They weren't the better coach team for 4 quarters. And they are an exciting, really fantastic football team that I fully expect to be a playoff caliber football team. They're going to have to find a new offensive coordinator. They're going to have to make some tweaks. They're going to add some talent in the draft. They have draft picks. They have capital. Like this Lions team, they're in a really great spot. And they're in an NFC that if you look around is a bunch of teams they've already beaten and them. And so I'm not hating on them. We'll talk about the Niners more here coming up, but that's what I'll start as I, kind of get your thoughts on the whole game as a whole.
Yeah, I think this whole weekend in general reminded me a lot of, how we kind of talk about baseball in a lot of ways. And, being a Cubs fan, I can really liken it to like what happened this past season where a lot of the difference in games, especially big situational games and big moments, is winning on the margins. It's making the right decisions to put your guy to get the most out of who's at your disposal, and so that you're not putting people in positions that they can't succeed. And so part of that we saw, I like it in the regular season when you're trying to give guys multiple opportunities to prove to themselves, to prove the doubters wrong and to rectify mistakes. But Josh Reynolds had 3 massive drops in this game, and if you're going to go for 4th on a lot of these situations that they are, I prefer the decision maker to be wanting that football in the hands of the best players. And so I'm making sure that Amon-Ra St. Brown is getting the shot at these, situations, or Sam Laporta, who's been dynamite for you all season long. Those types of situations and moments are key, and they can absolutely make or break you. At least in baseball, you have a series to go through these. In football, this is your only shot. This is the one chance you have. And Dan Campbell even said that after the game, that this might be their
I
only
loved his comments.
Ever.
I loved his comments. So how honest was that? There was nothing like rah-rah about it. It was the truth. He's like, we're going to be the hunted next year. We're not going to surprise anyone. This may have been our one and only shot. They need to know that. They need to hear the truth, but we're going to work our asses off to get back here. I mean, he nailed that. I will also say it's kind of nice not having to root for the Lions anymore. Like this was fun for me. This was fun for me, but I am now like, I won't be as rah-rah for the Lions next year if they make the playoffs. Like this was fun. This was exciting. But now I'm back to like, okay, we can go back to beating the Lions twice a year and getting some easy dubs.
Yeah, a lot of this just felt like trying to do something for the sake of doing it. It felt like, rolling out your, struggling closer who's coming off of 5 straight days of closing to try and get it on the 6th attempt, when at time you just gotta you just got to take the points there, Dan Campbell. You just got to do what you're sensing throughout the game. And for a guy who's an emotional leader, definitely much more of a less of a strategist and much more of a leader of men, I would have thought, maybe he would be riding the waves of this game and kind of realizing that moment. He just didn't take advantage of it. And it's interesting because we saw it on the flip side this week where, also sometimes guys just have to make plays, and that's where luck comes into it. That's where guys needing to be accountable comes into play. I mean, Jameer, the most, the least timely fumble of his short career, and he's not a fumbler. Reynolds, who was really good throughout the regular season, making some key drops. We see on the flip side, who was making big key plays. It was, for the Niners, it was Brock Purdy scrambling when he hadn't done that all year. It was MVS coming up with very clutch catches when he had been the guy that was struggling all year. And sometimes that's just guys stepping up. And, Zay Flowers, a great rookie for the Ravens, making a couple brutal mistakes in this game. But the number one most costly one, of course, being that fumble. And Lamar, throwing into triple coverage.
When he hasn't thrown a bunch of
down
picks.
to guys making plays.
Yeah, you're right, Dan. That's another really solid point by you. And I will say, the Lions also, they need to get a new kicker. Like a lot of it is if you look at the sets, they haven't trusted their kicker in the Dan Campbell era. And so to say it's a guarantee, and I get it. If you go and you try your kicker out there, I think especially on that one fourth down early in the third, and he misses a 40-something yarder, that's a killer for momentum too, right? So you're going to lose momentum if you don't get the fourth down. You're going to lose momentum if your kicker misses the kick. You quell the momentum if he makes it, and you keep the momentum and gain more if you go and make it on fourth down. That's all part of what that thought process is. So again, I think history will look more kindly on Dan Campbell in this moment. Listen, the Lions have never made a Super Bowl. They were inches away because of Dan Campbell and his coaching style and what he's done with this team. So don't sit.
They got there because of the sword,
and
they
I get it.
Died by it.
The NFL is full of mainly losers. Let's be honest. 99% of the teams and leagues are going to be losers this year. One team's going to win the Super Bowl trophy. And if you look at it historically, most teams win the majority of the Super Bowls, right? There's dynasties. There's your Steelers. There's the Niners. There's the Cowboys. There's the Patriots. Now the Chiefs. My team's won one. And so you just to sit there and say and people giving crap to Lamar, he's not good enough. Yeah, maybe he's not. Maybe he's not good enough to win the Super Bowl right now. But he's really bleeping good. So, you trot him out next year and you try it again. You don't blow it all up. And I'll say this now about Purdy and the Niners. They were good enough in these moments, and Purdy especially, his legs and scrambling, that was something we really haven't seen from him all year. And I give him a ton of credit for just saying to him, you know what? I'm just going to take what they give me, and I'm going to play calm. The one thing I'll say about him that is not unlike Jimmy G, he's tough, and in those moments, he'll scramble and he'll get you those things. Now, will he be like that 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now when he's got some more mileage on those legs? I don't know. But he's taking advantage of it right now. And the Chiefs, they need to look at that and understand, he's going to take what we give him. He's a smart kid playing with a smart head coach. I think already it's going to be a really fascinating matchup. Ayuk, massive catch. That was insane. And again, they needed that break. It was not a great throw by Purdy. They needed some breaks, and it just broke their way. And overall, they capitalized on those breaks, being the better team. I'm pumped for this matchup. It was my number 2 matchup, in our dream scenario, and I think it was yours too. It was kind of obvious the number 2 matchup. I think schematics-wise, coaching-wise, San Francisco has a slightly worse defense than the last time they played the Chiefs, but they have, I think, a better offense than the last time they played the Chiefs. There was no Debo in that game. You know, there was no Kittle was a rookie. So this team is Bosa, I think, was a rookie. Like this team is veterans, no Trent Williams on that team. Like this team is no Christian McCaffrey. Like
yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, or Ayuk, right?
So I think no Ayuk.
Maybe Ayuk was.
No, I don't think he was either. So it's there's a lot of dudes who were on that team. There's a lot of similar faces from Super Bowl 54 as there will be in Super Bowl 58. But overall, it's going to be, I think, a really fantastic matchup.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this one, and there's a lot of opportunities here at stake. But to piggyback off of your point about Purdy as well, it's just that I want to also give credit to the organization for, we talked about it when it happened, but this is the exact proof that we needed to show why taking your lumps and moving on is the best thing for any organization that you could possibly do.
Get Trey Lance.
The Cardinals could still have Josh Rosen right now, and I know that they haven't won much, but do you like the state that they're in right now versus what it could be with Josh Rosen? The getting rid of Trey Lance for peanuts, essentially, moving off of the guy that you moved up in the draft to get and didn't really get 5 starts total out of, in favor of Mr. Irrelevant. That speaks a lot to their ability, and I know that they had a sample size to work with. So a lot of you might say, "Oh, it was an easy decision to make because Purdy won 7 straight starts and took them deep into the playoffs his rookie year," but a lot of franchises wouldn't do it. A lot of franchises would say, no, we spend a second overall pick and draft capital to get Trey Lance. We're going to try and run it back again with him, and Brock Purdy will be our backup. But no, to their credit, they ran with Brock Purdy this year, and look where it got them. They're in the Super Bowl now. And
Barstool Big Cat who said, the AFC Championship game was kind of like the Bears in a nutshell, right? Do you stick with a guy who you think is a ceiling of Lamar Jackson, and you say, well, let's just try to build around the freak athlete and keep loading up on weapons and hope that he develops into a great passer? Or do you take the kid who's a great passer who, maybe is a little, wild, a little crazy, but is an elite passer in Caleb Williams? You don't have to worry about him passing the football like in a similar way to, Patrick Mahomes. It's tough. Your organization, I think you're speaking to your organization when you say that too. Just move on from Kenny Pickett. It didn't work. You took a stab, didn't work. Go get better. And Mahomes is going to drive a lot of this, because the problem is right now, you look at the AFC, how loaded the AFC is, and how right now it doesn't matter. Look who's standing once again on top of the mountain. The only person that got by him was Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is the only person to get by him, and then who's still in the league. Tom Brady did it, but then even Tom switched conferences and then did it again. But Joe Burrow is the only guy right now in the AFC who you can legitimately say that he's guy. I can put money that he could get by Mahomes, and even then it was one time, and in a really close game, and so it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And in the NFC, you're going to be looking to say the only guy to get by him was Tom Brady when he came to the Bucs. Otherwise, a generationally loaded coaching staff and talent of the Eagles couldn't do it. And a generationally loaded coaching staff and talent of the Niners couldn't do it twice, maybe. It is it's creating clarity, I guess, in the league to just basically say, we can either do one of two things over the next couple of years. We can just try to win 10, 12 games a season and win a bunch of playoff games and know we're probably not going to beat Mahomes, but we'll all keep our jobs. Or every year we need to go try to find the guy who's the next Joe Burrow who can beat Mahomes.
Yeah. No, it's a constant evolving situation at the quarterback position in the NFL, but especially the AFC. I mean, the conference is running out of teams with dire needs for a quarterback, and that is the deciding factor. I mean, we're not seeing, guys with just, good teams around them getting past Mahomes. That's why this will be an interesting matchup to see, because I don't necessarily think that Brock Purdy is, you know, just a dude, but he's, I don't think we're ready to crown him a superstar in the NFL yet at this point either. And so, it'd be interesting. I wonder if the years of the Trent Dilfer possibilities, or even, no offense to the Ravens fans, but the Joe Flacco's of the world, like if that can even happen anymore, with how many dominant quarterbacks there are in the
Yeah.
league, it's just harder to get by them,
It's going to take the Kyle Shanahan system. Like Shanahan can prove it, right?
Yeah.
He almost did it with Jimmy G. He's got a chance again here with Purdy. And then if Mike McDaniel can do it with Tua, and then if you guys can figure it out with the those type of quarterbacks, the Kenny Pickett's of the world, you need to build up around them in a way that is elite of the elite. Jared Goff almost kind of done it. You know what I mean? If he would have got there and he won the Super Bowl, like that's how you'd have to say that's how it gets done. But it is it's so frustrating for so many teams out there, because like we said on Friday, and now we're saying again on Monday, the Ravens were the best team in football all year. The Ravens beat good teams to a pulp, but Mahomes.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. And that's just that's the name of the game. That's what it's been all postseason long so far. And probably will be for the rest of time, that we're just going to keep saying, well, we can't bet against Patrick Mahomes, because he's the cheat code. He's the guy that, no matter what else has gone right for everyone else, they still have to get through that brick wall. And that's a tough, tall task for sure. So, well, we have 2 weeks off here in terms of football. We've got, obviously this week of prep for all of the teams, and then they have the full media week ahead of the Super Bowl in Vegas, coming up in mid-February. It's the 11th, right? Is that the
Super Bowl is the 11th?
The Super Bowl, the
11th. So we'll have a ton of media stuff the 5th through the 9th.
Yeah, yep. So a lot of sound bites to parse through that week and everything like that. But we're still going to have plenty of episodes coming your way. Don't worry about that. A lot of analysis, probably some ranking here of the Super Bowl teams. Maybe we'll throw some trivia in there and a couple other things as well. So stay tuned for all of that. But we appreciate you being here with us all season long, and we appreciate having you here for this last leg of the 2023-24 NFL season ahead of Super Bowl 58. Looking forward to it very much. As always, please subscribe on YouTube, give us a like, and check us out on social media as always. Until next time, we'll see ya. And this has been the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan.